Anil Gupta is Professor of Strategy at the University of Maryland and at the European Institute of Business Administration in SEAD. Anil Gupta, thank you so much for joining us. First of all, let's talk about China, okay? They made this rate cut. It's come before, well, quite a lot of important economic data. Do they know something that we don't?
I think the fact that China's economy is slowing down and has to slow down, I think that's widely accepted.
You can't keep on at this breakneck speed, can you, really?
No, you cannot. And in fact, I mean, last year China grew at 9. This year it'll probably grow at 7. And, you know, I am of the opinion that within a couple of years, China's economic growth rate will probably slow down to 6%. You know, so therefore, if you will, the new normal in China would be more like 6. And the question really is, how do you manage the transition from, say, a 10 to a 6? You know,
well, what is the difference, actually? I mean, they're both very big growth rates.
They are very big growth rates, but, I mean, you compound at 10 for 10 years, you compound at 6 for 10 years. That's a huge difference. And again, you know, it's partly, so that's number one. The second is of expectations. That if you expect to grow at 10, or if you expect to grow at 8+, and you actually grow at 6, then it's a significant letdown from the expectations point of view, but also, you know, from the perspective of companies and the economy. If you've been making investments with the expectation that the economy grows at 9 or 10, but in reality, actually, it starts to grow at 6. So that, you know, then that's a huge problem.
Okay, and the growth is meant to be kind of being balanced towards, shifted towards the domestic demand side of things here, but not seeing that much of a move as, I suppose you can't have everything overnight happen like that, but do you have seen this reversion to the old growth model, which is heavy investment spending?
I think, I mean, we see some, you know, like the rate cut that we saw yesterday, some of the acceleration of infrastructure projects, so they're not necessarily in the direction of faster consumption. But at the same time, you know, China is like a big ocean liner. And not just a big ocean liner, an ocean liner that had been growing at breakneck speed in the direction of investment. And now, you know, the leadership at the top, they realize that there has to be a shift in which direction this liner is headed. But, you know, I mean, this to shift China, this ocean liner, towards consumption, that's not going to be a slow process. But what's important is that it begins to shift. If it doesn't begin to shift, and if the policy moves continue to be pro-investment rather than pro-consumption, then that would be a bigger concern about China.
I wanted, you know, one country which doesn't have to worry about domestic demand is India. Neighbouring India, of course, has got a whole set of different issues, hasn't it? I mean, inflation, which appears to be almost structural, policy paralysis. We don't know what's going to happen next. We've got a government in limbo right now. It doesn't seem to be wanting, by the messages it gives out, wanting FDI and foreign direct investment. What do you make of what's been going on there and the noise out of Delhi?
I think, I mean, you know, if I look at India, basically I would sort of 2 words. Number one, in terms of the fundamentals of the country, the economy, those fundamentals remain very strong. But if I look at the politics, the political system right now, and particularly the UPA, the coalition that's in power, the only way to describe it is political incompetence, you know. And of course, you know, it's a coalition, and coalitions are always harder to manage. But, you know, if you have strong leadership at the top that knows how to manage the coalition, then things can be done. But
a lot of people have been blaming Manmohan Singh, though, haven't they?
And I think he deserves the blame. You know, I mean, he's a smart economist.
No, he's the one who, you know, you have to say, he's the one who started India on this trajectory of liberalised growth. Absolutely,
absolutely, you know, but, I mean, you know, essentially he hardly says a word, and he's not a politician. And so therefore you have a challenge in terms of, you know, that the real power is Mrs. Gandhi, but, you know, her agenda is not necessarily exactly the same.
Okay, what they've been doing in order to curb inflation has been basically a bit of a nightmare. You've got high interest rates. They don't do much to control inflation because inflation is structural, partly as a result of that policy paralysis that you're talking about.
Absolutely, absolutely. In fact, I mean, the inflation in India is actually because of supply constraints. And so therefore, you know, trying to hike up interest rates as the Reserve Bank did, you know, I mean, that, you know, may curb demand, but it does nothing. Actually,
but it hurts corporate India more than anything else.
It hurts corporate India, but it also hurts investment in the country. And so therefore, and also, I mean, not just the interest rate. You know, you look at the FDI policy in retail, for example. is that I would tend to
That
agree
was the
with.
flip-flopping which went on, of course.
Yeah, I mean, and number one, so what's wrong is flip-flopping. Number two is, the ideal strategy for India, or ideal policy perspective for India, would be to not flip-flop, to have predictable policies.
Like China.
And, yes, like China, and to move steadily in one direction, hopefully in the direction
As you say,
of liberalization.
in Manmohan Singh's defense, it is a coalition. It is hard to manage a coalition.
True, but you see, it is hard to manage a coalition, and in order to manage a coalition, you have to be very good at what I would say soft power within the country. But Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, because he's not a politician, if you will, even God would find it difficult to figure out how he exercises soft power, because he doesn't. And so that's the problem in India politically.
Very quickly, all of this worsened by a rupee which has had a torrid time of it. I mean, is a weaker and weaker rupee actually in some ways a big advantage for the country too?
It is, but at the same time, of course, a weaker rupee makes investors nervous, particularly foreign investors nervous. And the weakening of the rupee, partly it's a function of what's happening within the country, but it's also strengthening of the dollar. And so, just the European problem, so there's a flight to safety, and the dollar becomes stronger vis-a-vis, much of Asia, most of the Asian currencies. But, I'd like, going back to Indian politics, is that the Indian political system has, given the nature, it's relatively conservative, and it's a coalition, that it has a habit of responding
when its back's against the wall.
When the country's back is against the wall. And I think there is a huge sense, certainly within corporate India, in the media, and in the government, that the country's back is to the wall, and in a way, that may be a reason for a certain degree of optimism.
Anil Gupta, thank you so much. Anil talking to us about China, also there about India, and I just can't remember who made that quote about this, which is that India has law, but China has order. And I think that makes sense. Maybe it sums everything up, doesn't it?
I think that's very accurate.
Thank you very much.